Welcome back to the channel. If you're here late at night looking for a story to drift off to, you're in the right place. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. On the afternoon of October 14th, 2012, a column of dark smoke rose above an olive grove on the outskirts of Valdearenas, a quiet town in southern Spain. The fire burned longer than a normal brush burn and gave off a sharp, heavy smell that drifted across nearby fields. A few hours later, a frantic call came into emergency services. A father claimed his two young children had disappeared while playing at a public playground near the town center. Within minutes, police cars, volunteers, and neighbors were mobilizing, driven by the same shared hope that the children would be found nearby, frightened but alive. No one yet understood that the smoke, the fire, and the call were all part of the same terrible story. The man who made the call was named Andres Molina. He was 39 years old, born and raised in Valdearenas, the son of a conservative middle-class family. Andres grew up in a rigid household shaped by discipline and tradition. Order was valued above emotion, obedience above affection. As a young man, he followed a path that seemed natural to those around him. He joined the army, eventually reaching the rank of sergeant. During a deployment abroad as part of a humanitarian mission, he worked as a driver, transporting injured civilians and soldiers. Those years exposed him to violence and loss, and when he returned home, something about him had hardened. He left the military abruptly, citing anxiety and health issues, though colleagues later described him as increasingly withdrawn and volatile. Not long after returning to civilian life, Andres met Laura Benitez, a university student studying animal science. She was warm, outspoken, and optimistic, everything Andres was not. Their relationship moved quickly. Within a few years, they were married. From the beginning, Andres made his position clear. He did not want children. If they ever had any, he said, the responsibility would be entirely hers. Laura believed that time would soften him. It didn't. Their first child, a daughter named Clara, was born in 2006. 2 years later, a son, Mateo, followed. The arrival of the children exposed deep fractures in the marriage. Andres tolerated Clara with distant indifference, but the birth of Mateo marked a sharp shift. His behavior grew more controlling, more severe. He dictated routines, criticized Laura constantly, and monitored her interactions with family and friends. Over time, Laura found herself isolated, cut off from support, walking on eggshells to avoid his anger. Andres developed obsessive habits that dominated the household. He was terrified of germs, refusing to touch door handles or sit on public benches unless they were thoroughly cleaned. He imposed strict rules on the children, forcing them to wash their hands repeatedly and scolding them harshly for normal noise. Mealtimes were silent affairs. Andres often wore earplugs inside the house, claiming the sound of voices overwhelmed him. What he called order felt more like punishment. For years, Laura endured it, believing she could protect her children by keeping the peace. Eventually, the strain became unbearable. With the encouragement of a therapist, she began to understand that Andres's behavior was not just difficult, but abusive. In the summer of 2012, she told him she wanted a divorce. The news shattered whatever fragile balance Andres had been maintaining. Outwardly, he agreed to seek help. He began seeing a psychologist and was prescribed medication for anxiety. Privately, he spiraled. He called his therapist repeatedly, sometimes multiple times a day, reporting panic, rage, and despair. Years earlier, as a teenager, Andres had attempted to take his own life after a breakup. That history weighed heavily now as the separation became real. Laura moved with Clara and Mateo to the nearby town of San Lucero, where her mother lived. The distance gave her a sense of safety, though it came with constant worry. A custody arrangement was set. Andres would have the children every other weekend. The weekend of October 13th, 2012 was one of those visits. On the surface, nothing seemed unusual. Andres picked up the children from Laura's mother's house and spent the night at his parents' home. The next morning, he drove them to his own property on the outskirts of Valdearenas. According to what he would later tell police, the children fell asleep in the car. He claimed he decided to burn old personal items belonging to Laura, saying he wanted to erase reminders of their failed marriage. By early afternoon, smoke was rising from behind his house. Later that day, Andres drove toward the town park. At around 6 p.m., he called his brother and suggested meeting up with their children. When no one arrived, he waited. Then, as evening approached, he made the call that would change everything. He told emergency services that Clara and Mateo had vanished while playing, that he had only looked away for a moment. Police responded immediately. Search teams combed the park, nearby streets, and wooded areas. Taxi drivers volunteered to patrol the roads. Photos of the children were printed and distributed. The town came together in a way that felt instinctive and desperate. But as hours passed, cracks began to show. Andres didn't file a formal report until late that night. When questioned, his account shifted. First, he said the children disappeared while walking beside him. Later, he claimed he had been distracted by his phone. He suggested that someone from Laura's family might have taken them, an accusation that investigators quickly dismissed after confirming Laura and her relatives had been in San Lucero all day. Laura, upon hearing the news, felt a sick certainty settle in her chest. She drove back to Valdearenas immediately. That night, she stood beside neighbors at a candlelight vigil, praying for a miracle while fearing the worst. Investigators began looking closely at Andres's movements. They learned about the fire at his property and decided to inspect it. Andres accompanied officers back to the house. The bonfire was still warm, embers glowing beneath a layer of ash. Nearby, they found items that raised concern: sharp kitchen tools and rolls of tape inside his car. Andres offered explanations, but his flat tone and lack of visible emotion unsettled everyone present. The following day, police obtained traffic camera footage from the roads between Andres's house and the park. His car appeared clearly. The children did not. Witnesses at the park reported seeing Andres alone. That evening, officers returned to the property for a closer examination of the fire site. Beneath the ashes, they discovered makeshift structures designed to intensify heat. Mixed within the debris were small fragments of bone. Andres insisted they were animal remains, claiming he had burned old study materials and preserved specimens that once belonged to Laura. The fragments were collected and sent for analysis. For now, the official conclusion was inconclusive. The remains were believed to be non-human. But the investigation did not slow. Too many details pointed in the same direction: the intensity of the fire, the timeline, the lies that kept shifting under pressure. As night fell over Valdearenas, the search for Clara and Mateo continued. Their names echoed through streets and fields, carried by volunteers who still believed they might be found. Yet beneath the hope, a darker possibility was taking shape, one that would soon force the country to confront an unthinkable truth. The case did not move forward the way cold cases usually do, with a single revelation or a dramatic breakthrough. Instead, it crept forward in fragments, pulled along by footage that had never been meant to matter. After the dashcam clip surfaced, investigators returned to the original files and began looking again at everything that had been written off years earlier. Time had changed the way they saw the evidence. What once looked like coincidence now felt deliberate. What once felt incomplete now felt hidden. The victim, a night shift warehouse supervisor named Daniel Moore, had been found dead in a deserted industrial access road just before dawn. At the time, police had ruled it a robbery gone wrong. His wallet was missing, his phone was gone, the area was poorly lit, and there were no businesses open at that hour. The case cooled quickly, slipping into a filing cabinet labeled unresolved. But the dashcam footage changed the framing entirely. It placed a dark sedan at the scene minutes before Daniel's estimated time of death. It also showed something else. The car did not stop once. It circled the block twice. When detectives enhanced the footage using modern software, they noticed a brief reflection on the rear window. It was not enough to identify a face, but it was enough to suggest a second person in the back seat. That detail did not match the robbery narrative. Street robberies in that area were usually fast and chaotic, not planned loops around a block. The looping suggested surveillance, or hesitation, or coordination. Detectives reopened interviews with residents who had lived nearby at the time. Many had moved away, but a few still remembered the night clearly. One woman recalled hearing an engine idling for a long time outside her building. Another remembered headlights sweeping across her bedroom ceiling more than once. At the time, no one had connected those moments to Daniel's death. Now they formed a pattern. The investigation expanded outward, following the path of the sedan. Traffic cameras from neighboring intersections were pulled, even though the resolution was poor by today's standards. Frame by frame, analysts traced the vehicle's movement through the district. It passed 3 intersections where cameras were mounted too high to capture license plates, but low enough to catch silhouettes inside the car. In one frame, the driver's posture was unusually rigid, both hands locked on the wheel. In another, the rear passenger leaned forward, briefly visible between the front seats. The team cross-referenced the timing with Daniel's work schedule. He had left the warehouse at 2:47 a.m. The sedan appeared on the access road at 2:51 a.m. The timing was too precise to ignore. Someone had known when he would leave. Attention shifted to Daniel's personal life, which had not been examined closely before. He had no criminal history, no known enemies, and no signs of financial trouble. But he had recently reported safety concerns at work. The warehouse handled returned electronics, some of them high value. Daniel had flagged missing inventory more than once. Internal reports showed he emailed management about possible theft, asking for surveillance upgrades and better lighting in the lot. Those emails led investigators to a former coworker named Marcus Hale. Marcus had been dismissed from the warehouse 6 weeks before Daniel's death, officially for repeated tardiness. Unofficially, Daniel had been the one who escalated the issue to management. At the time, Marcus had been interviewed briefly and cleared. He said he was at home that night, alone. No one had challenged it. With the case reopened, detectives revisited Marcus. He was older now, his life visibly changed by time and instability. When asked again about the night of the murder, his answers were similar, but slower, less confident. He still claimed to have been home, but he could not remember what he had been watching on television or whether he had spoken to anyone. Small inconsistencies crept into his story. Investigators obtained Marcus's phone records from the time, something that had not been done originally due to limited resources. The records showed his phone had pinged a tower near the warehouse at 2:34 a.m. That alone did not prove anything, but it contradicted his statement. When confronted, Marcus said he must have been driving around to clear his head. He could not explain why he hadn't mentioned it before. The case took another turn when a retired patrol officer came forward. He had been reviewing old dashcam footage as part of a training archive and recognized the industrial road. His camera had been running that night as he drove past the area on a routine patrol, about 15 minutes after Daniel was believed to have been killed. The footage was dark and grainy, but it showed a figure standing near the roadside, illuminated briefly by the cruiser's headlights. The figure turned away as the patrol car approached, stepping back into the shadows. The officer had not stopped at the time because there was no obvious sign of distress. Watching it years later, he realized how unusual the posture was. The person was not walking, not running, just waiting. Forensic analysts enhanced the image and focused on the clothing. The jacket matched one Marcus had been known to wear based on old social media photos. It was not definitive, but it was enough to justify a search warrant. Investigators searched Marcus's current residence and found an old duffel bag in a storage closet. Inside was a jacket with a worn lining. Forensic testing revealed trace fibers consistent with Daniel's clothing. The evidence was still circumstantial, but the narrative was tightening. Detectives theorized that Marcus had been waiting for Daniel, possibly with an accomplice. The second person seen in the sedan may have been someone who helped him get there and then waited nearby. The looping of the car could have been nerves or a lookout gone wrong. The question remained why the phone and wallet were missing. A search of pawn records from the weeks after the murder turned up Daniel's phone, sold at a small shop across town. The seller had used a fake name, but the transaction had been captured on CCTV. The footage was poor, but the seller's walk and build resembled Marcus. It was another silent witness, overlooked because no one had known to ask the right question at the time. As the case moved toward charges, the pressure increased. Marcus's alibi had collapsed. The phone records, the jacket fibers, the CCTV sale, and the dashcam sightings formed a chain that was hard to dismiss. Still, prosecutors were cautious. Cold cases built on technology often faced skepticism in court. They needed something stronger, something that tied Marcus directly to the moment of the crime. That final piece would come from an unexpected source, but at this stage of the investigation, no one knew it yet. All they knew was that a case once thought lost was now breathing again, guided not by eyewitnesses or confessions, but by cameras that had watched quietly, waiting years for someone to listen. The final piece did not arrive with flashing lights or a dramatic confession. It surfaced quietly, the way most truths do in cold cases, through routine work and patience. As prosecutors weighed whether they had enough to move forward, a digital forensics analyst revisited the original dashcam clip one last time, not to enhance the image, but to analyze the audio track. Years earlier, the sound had been dismissed as useless. Wind, engine hum, distant traffic, nothing obvious. This time they listened differently. Buried beneath the noise was a short, uneven sound that repeated twice. It was not a voice, and it was not mechanical. After isolating the frequency, the analyst realized it was the sound of a car door opening and closing. Not the sedan seen looping the block, but another vehicle, closer to the dashcam. The timing placed it seconds before Daniel Moore's estimated time of death. That detail changed everything. Investigators mapped the position of the dashcam vehicle, the looping sedan, and the patrol car that passed later. When they overlaid the audio timing with the video frames, a new possibility emerged. The second vehicle had been parked out of frame, closer to where Daniel's body was later found. The sedan may not have been the primary transport at all. It may have been a decoy. Detectives went back to Marcus Hale's phone records again, this time focusing on call logs rather than location data. One number stood out. It belonged to an old friend, Thomas Reed, a mechanic who lived less than a mile from the industrial road. The two had exchanged several short calls in the hour before the murder, each lasting under 30 seconds. None of those calls had been mentioned in Marcus's interviews. When investigators brought Thomas in for questioning, he was defensive but calm. He admitted knowing Marcus and admitted to speaking with him that night. He claimed Marcus had asked for a ride home after an argument with his girlfriend. According to Thomas, he picked Marcus up, drove him around for a bit, then dropped him off near his apartment. He denied going anywhere near the warehouse. The story fell apart quickly. Traffic camera footage showed Thomas's truck driving toward the industrial area, not away from it. Another camera caught the truck parked briefly on a side street near the access road. The timestamps aligned with the mysterious car door sounds from the dashcam audio. When confronted with the footage, Thomas went silent. The pressure shifted. Investigators separated Marcus and Thomas, confronting each with each other's statements. Marcus insisted Thomas had nothing to do with it. Thomas, shaken and clearly overwhelmed, asked for a lawyer. But the damage was done. The timeline now had 2 vehicles, 2 suspects, and a coordinated presence at the scene. The final breakthrough came from the warehouse itself. During the renewed investigation, a technician upgrading the building's security system discovered an old external hard drive mislabeled and forgotten in a locked cabinet. It contained backup footage from a temporary camera that had been installed in the loading area months before Daniel's death and then removed. The camera had not covered the access road, but it had captured the parking lot exit. At 2:46 a.m., Daniel's car was seen leaving the lot. 1 minute later, another vehicle followed. The angle was poor, but the shape matched Thomas Reed's truck. The headlights were unmistakable. The footage proved Daniel had been followed directly from work. Faced with mounting evidence, Thomas broke first. In a recorded interview, he admitted he had driven Marcus that night, but claimed he had not known Marcus planned to confront Daniel. According to Thomas, Marcus had been angry about losing his job and believed Daniel had sabotaged him. He said Marcus asked to talk, nothing more. Thomas claimed he waited in the truck while Marcus approached Daniel and that when Marcus returned, he was shaken and panicked. Thomas said he drove away without asking questions. Marcus's version was different. When confronted with Thomas's statement and the warehouse footage, Marcus admitted to meeting Daniel but denied intending to kill him. He claimed the confrontation escalated, that Daniel threatened to call the police, and that things spun out of control. He said the wallet and phone were taken in a panic, not as part of a robbery. The looping sedan, Marcus said, belonged to another acquaintance who had backed out at the last minute, leaving Thomas as the driver instead. Prosecutors charged Marcus Hale with murder and Thomas Reed with accessory after the fact. The case went to trial nearly a decade after Daniel Moore's death. In court, there was no dramatic reenactment, no shocking revelation. The prosecution laid out the story slowly, methodically, built on technology that did not exist or was not accessible at the time of the original investigation. Jurors saw the dashcam footage, the traffic camera clips, the warehouse video, and the CCTV from the pawn shop. They listened to the enhanced audio and heard the car door sounds that placed Thomas's truck at the scene. They saw phone records and timelines that showed coordination, not coincidence. The defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that technology could mislead, that memories fade and assumptions grow stronger with time. But the cameras did not forget. After deliberating for 2 days, the jury returned a guilty verdict against Marcus Hale. Thomas Reed was convicted on a lesser charge and sentenced accordingly. Daniel Moore's family sat quietly as the verdicts were read, their relief subdued by the years they had spent without answers. In the weeks that followed, the case drew attention for what it represented rather than for its drama. It became an example taught in investigative training, a reminder that evidence does not expire just because a case goes cold. Dash cams, traffic cameras, forgotten backups, and overlooked audio tracks were not designed to solve crimes, but they often become the most honest witnesses of all. They don't choose sides. They don't forget details. They simply record, waiting for the moment when someone looks again and asks the right question. Daniel Moore's case was never solved by a single camera. It was solved by the accumulation of quiet observations scattered across years and devices brought together by persistence. In the end, justice did not arrive loudly. It arrived patiently, carried forward by silent witnesses that had been there all along, watching, remembering, and waiting to be heard. Around 2 a.m, Maya Eldridge stepped out of a rideshare and into the quiet lobby of her apartment building in Midtown Clearwater. Security cameras later showed her pausing near the entrance, smoothing her jacket, looking tired but steady, like someone ready to end a long night. She was alone. Within hours, police would be standing outside her door. What they found inside would unravel a story no one in her life could have imagined, and the truth would point toward a place that was supposed to be safe. Maya was 27, driven, and deeply loved. She worked as a digital marketing coordinator for a regional property firm, a role she had earned through persistence rather than connections. Friends described her as warm and quick-witted, the kind of person who remembered birthdays and sent encouraging messages before big meetings. At work, she was dependable and sharp. Outside of it, she made time for friends, family, and community events, always moving, always building something. A few months earlier, Maya had moved into Harbor Point Residences, a modern complex just north of downtown. It felt like a fresh start. The building advertised secure access, overnight staff, and monitored entry points. Maya liked the idea of coming home late without worrying. Her parents liked it even more. It was the kind of place where everyone believed the systems in place were enough. The night everything changed was a Friday, the evening of Clearwater United's season finale. Maya had worn teal to show support, meeting friends at a neighborhood bar to watch the match. The win sparked celebration, and the group eventually moved on to a nearby club on Bay Street. Maya stayed for a while, laughing, dancing, enjoying the noise. Sometime after midnight, she decided to head home. It was not unusual. Friends often split up, trusting they would all get back safely. Maya had plans the next morning. A friend was expecting her for brunch. When she did not show and did not answer messages, concern began to creep in. Maya was known for replying quickly, even when busy. By early afternoon, concern turned into worry. Calls went unanswered, messages stayed unread. One friend drove to Harbor Point to check on her. Maya's car was in its assigned space. In the back seat sat a gift bag she had picked up earlier in the week, meant for a coworker's baby shower. It was a small detail, but it told a story. She had expected to be back out the next day. When knocks on her apartment door went unanswered, her friends called for help. By 8 that evening, police arrived. Inside the apartment, nothing seemed disturbed at first. The living room was tidy, the kitchen showed no signs of a struggle, but in the bedroom, officers found Maya on the bed, partially covered, unmoving. The scene was immediately treated as a homicide. There were signs of a struggle. Personal items were missing. A strong chemical smell lingered in the room, sharp and out of place. Cleaning supplies from under the sink had been pulled out and left open. Investigators noticed small details that didn't sit right. The bedding showed discoloration consistent with cleaning agents. A discarded wrapper lay near the bed. The bathroom door was ajar, and the toilet seat was raised, an oddity given that Maya lived alone. Technicians collected fingerprints from the underside of the seat and gathered biological samples during the autopsy. The medical examiner later noted severe injuries to Maya's neck, injuries that suggested intense force. News of Maya's death spread quickly through Clearwater. She had grown up nearby, graduated from North Shore High, and volunteered with local outreach groups. The shock rippled outward. Police asked the public for help, urging anyone who had seen Maya in the early morning hours to come forward. Security footage from Harbor Point became a critical focus. Cameras showed Maya entering the building shortly before 2 a.m. She did not have her access fob. According to the overnight security guard, Ryan Cole, she entered when another resident opened the door. Cole told investigators he later noticed Maya struggling to unlock her apartment. She mentioned she might have left her keys in her car and asked if he could walk with her to the garage. Cole claimed they stepped outside together, but before reaching the garage, Maya stopped and said she remembered her door code. She turned back toward the building and hurried inside alone. Cole claimed that was the last time he saw her that night, but that story would not remain consistent. As detectives retraced Maya's movements from the club to her apartment, they reviewed footage from nearby streets and businesses. Maya stood out in the recordings, wearing light jeans and a bright top. On one corner, a city camera captured her with two women she did not appear to know. Investigators released still images, asking those individuals to come forward. They did. The women explained they had noticed Maya walking unsteadily and stopped to check on her. She did not have her phone or wallet. Concerned, they offered to share their rideshare with her. During the ride, Maya recognized her apartment complex as they approached an intersection. She asked to be let out immediately and rushed toward the building. The women followed to make sure she got inside safely. When Maya could not access the door, they encountered the security guard. He told her he couldn't let her in without identification. As they spoke, another resident exited, allowing Maya to slip inside. The women waited briefly, then left once they saw Maya enter the lobby. Their account matched the footage. Inside Maya's apartment, investigators found her tablet, which was synced to her phone. Through it, they recovered messages from the night before. The last outgoing message, sent just after 5 in the morning, was a single word sent to a contact saved as Alex. Alex was someone Maya had been casually seeing. He cooperated fully with police, provided DNA, and was quickly ruled out. His alibi was solid. Another former partner, Daniel, was also interviewed. He had worked a late shift at a restaurant that night, confirmed by staff and security footage. Like Alex, his DNA did not match any of the evidence collected. A private memorial was held days later, attended by family, friends, and coworkers. Stories poured out about Maya's kindness, her ambition, her laughter. Many said they had not realized just how many people she had touched until they saw the room filled. Behind the scenes, investigators continued reviewing Harbor Point's off-site surveillance footage, stored on a separate system. Frame by frame, they tracked movement through the building. At 1:48 a.m., Maya appeared entering the stairwell. A man followed closely behind her, asking if she was okay before moving out of frame. Moments later, Maya climbed toward her floor. At 2:07 a.m., she was seen again, this time moving quickly up another set of stairs. The security guard appeared behind her, matching his earlier account. But questions lingered. If his shift ended at 6, why was he still visible on cameras well after that time? Then came the moment that changed the direction of the case. At 6:34 a.m., footage showed Ryan Cole carrying 2 large trash bags from the second floor toward the parking garage. He returned minutes later. Building management confirmed that removing trash was not part of his duties. The bags matched the type missing from Maya's apartment. The helpful witness was becoming a suspect. As police prepared to take the next step, they knew the truth of what happened inside Maya Eldridge's apartment was closer than ever, and it was pointing not outward, but inward, towards someone who had been trusted to watch over the building while everyone slept. Detectives immediately focused on Ryan Cole, the overnight security guard at Harbor Point, as a person of interest. At first, he claimed he had merely done his job, helping residents and ensuring the building remained secure. But the surveillance footage showing him carrying trash bags matching those from Maya's apartment painted a different story. Investigators began the painstaking process of tracing his movements before and after the early morning hours, hoping to uncover any inconsistencies that might connect him to the crime. Ryan was called in for questioning. He presented as calm, polite, and cooperative, the image of a responsible guard. Initially, he denied ever entering Maya's apartment or interacting with her beyond the brief moments in the lobby. He explained that the trash bags he was seen carrying contained routine building refuse he had gathered before his shift ended, but his timeline did not match the footage. Cameras showed him leaving the second floor at 6:36 a.m. and returning minutes later. There was no legitimate reason for him to make this repeated trip. Detectives then turned to forensic evidence. Fingerprints were lifted from the underside of Maya's toilet seat, a peculiar detail that suggested her attacker had spent time in the bathroom and left traces behind. The prints matched Ryan Cole. Further analysis of DNA samples collected during the autopsy revealed traces of his genetic material on Maya's body. Investigators now had both physical evidence and digital surveillance pointing toward the same man. Police also examined Ryan's phone and computer activity. They discovered a series of unusual searches conducted shortly before and after Maya's murder. One, at approximately 5:05 a.m., involved instructions for bypassing keypad locks, the same type installed on Maya's apartment door. The timing was chilling. Maya's last outgoing text had been sent just minutes earlier, and she was already inside the building trying to get into her unit. It was now evident that someone had intentionally studied how to gain unauthorized access to her home. Further investigation into Ryan's background revealed troubling red flags. He had been employed at Harbor Point for nearly 2 years and had previously received complaints about inappropriate behavior from residents, though none had escalated to formal action. He had no prior criminal convictions, but police discovered that he had been fired from a previous security position for dishonesty. Colleagues described him as quiet and efficient, but socially awkward and sometimes obsessive. While nothing explicitly tied him to violent behavior in the past, the combination of access, opportunity, and technical knowledge raised serious concerns. Detectives decided to obtain a search warrant for Ryan's residence. When they entered, they immediately noticed signs consistent with the crime. Among his belongings were shoes matching footprints found in Maya's apartment and cleaning supplies similar to those discovered at the scene. The apartment also contained personal notes and schedules detailing the building's residents and their routines. It appeared Ryan had been monitoring his tenants far more closely than anyone suspected. Meanwhile, police revisited the timeline of the night in question. Maya had left the club alone sometime after midnight. Footage from streets and businesses along her route confirmed she walked unassisted for several blocks before approaching Harbor Point. She attempted entry into the building multiple times, first with her FOB, which she did not have, and then by keypad. It was during this vulnerable period, just moments before she disappeared from view, that Ryan likely intercepted her. Colleagues and friends were interviewed to reconstruct Maya's behavior leading up to her death. Witnesses reported she had consumed alcohol that evening, but remained coherent, social, and aware of her surroundings. There was no indication she knew of any imminent danger. Detectives concluded that she had been caught off guard, her trust in the building's safety exploited by someone with inside knowledge. Forensic teams also re-examined the scene inside her apartment. They noted that bleach had been applied in specific areas, particularly near the bed and bathroom. The pattern suggested an attempt to destroy evidence. Investigators identified hair strands, fibers, and biological material mixed with the cleaning agents. These remnants would prove crucial in linking Ryan directly to the assault. A polygraph test was administered to Ryan Cole under controlled conditions. Although the results were technically inadmissible in court, the test was revealing. When asked if he had ever entered Maya's apartment, his physiological responses spiked. The examiner then inquired about strangulation. Ryan's reaction intensified. While he maintained verbal denials, the responses suggested deception and heightened stress, providing investigators with further justification to pursue a more in-depth forensic review. The combination of fingerprint evidence, DNA, digital searches, and security footage began to form a clear narrative. Ryan had been present during the assault, had likely carried out the attack, and had attempted to cover his tracks afterwards. He had taken advantage of his role as a security guard to monitor residents, identify vulnerabilities, and gain access without suspicion. Detectives conducted further interviews with Ryan's acquaintances and coworkers. A pattern emerged. He was meticulous, controlling, and often silent about his personal life. Colleagues recalled him mentioning residents in ways that seemed obsessive or unusually attentive. It became clear that his access to building security systems and familiarity with residents' habits provided him both the opportunity and the means to commit the crime. During this phase of the investigation, experts were brought in to analyze the cleaning patterns within Maya's apartment. They concluded that the bleach application and rearrangement of objects were deliberate attempts to erase forensic evidence. This included wiping down surfaces, moving the bedding, and disposing of personal items in the trash bags later seen on camera. These actions demonstrated premeditation and an understanding of investigative methods. Authorities also re-interviewed the two women who had accompanied Maya briefly from the club to the building. They confirmed that they had seen Maya interact with Ryan in the lobby, but had no idea he would later harm her. Their statements helped corroborate the timeline, showing that Maya had not entered the apartment with anyone else and that Ryan's presence was both opportunistic and calculated. Investigators explored Ryan's financial records and personal communications. They found no direct motive related to theft or robbery, further suggesting the crime was sexually motivated. Ryan's internet activity, including searches about lock bypass and physical restraint techniques, painted a disturbing picture of intent. Coupled with his proximity to Maya and access to her apartment, it left little doubt in detectives' minds about his role. In the weeks following the collection of evidence, forensic analysts confirmed the match of Ryan's DNA to samples from Maya's body and apartment. Shoe prints in her bedroom matched his size and tread pattern, and fibers from his uniform were found near the bed. The scientific analysis was compelling. Physical evidence, digital trails, and surveillance footage converged on Ryan as the perpetrator. With the case solidifying, police moved to arrest Ryan Cole. On October 21, 2015, he was taken into custody. The charges were severe: first-degree murder, sexual battery, and burglary with assault. Investigators described the assault as both opportunistic and predatory. By exploiting his position of trust, Ryan had committed a violent and calculated crime that shocked the Clearwater community. Once in custody, Ryan's legal team immediately filed motions to suppress certain evidence, including the polygraph results, arguing that his cooperation was involuntary and that some forensic procedures were improperly handled. Defense attorneys also attempted to question the reliability of surveillance footage and DNA matching procedures, but prosecutors were confident. The body of evidence extended far beyond a single element. It was a network of interlocking proofs. As preparations for the trial began, Maya's family became deeply involved. Her parents, Ken and Lila Eltridge, channeled their grief into advocacy. They began working with local law enforcement and community organizations to educate residents on personal safety, the risks of over-reliance on security staff, and the importance of digital evidence preservation. For them, the trial was not just about justice, it was about preventing another tragedy. Meanwhile, investigators reviewed the broader practices at Harbor Point. They discovered minor lapses in oversight, including inconsistent monitoring of security staff and delayed reporting of complaints. While these were not direct causes of Maya's murder, they contributed to the environment that allowed Ryan to operate unnoticed. Building management committed to revising policies and strengthening tenant safeguards in response. In parallel, forensic teams recreated the crime scene in simulations to understand the sequence of events. Using evidence collected from the apartment, including the placement of objects, patterns of bleach application, and the positions of footprints, analysts concluded that Ryan had likely entered the unit shortly after Maya and forced his way in. The assault occurred over a period of minutes, during which he applied both physical force and manipulative tactics to subdue her. Throughout the investigation, public attention remained high. Local news outlets followed developments, emphasizing both the tragic loss and the professional handling of the case by law enforcement. Community meetings were held to discuss safety measures and the risks posed by insider threats in residential settings. Maya's story became a cautionary tale about trust, vigilance, and the importance of secure building practices. The case also drew attention to the role of technology in modern criminal investigations. Surveillance footage, digital communication records, and forensic DNA analysis proved pivotal. Investigators highlighted the need for comprehensive monitoring and data collection in residential complexes to assist in both prevention and investigation of crimes. By the end of this stage, the pattern was unmistakable. Ryan Cole had exploited access, knowledge, and opportunity. Evidence from multiple sources, biological, digital, and testimonial, converged to form an undeniable narrative of guilt. The groundwork for prosecution was set, and the stage was being prepared for a trial that would test every piece of evidence in court. In the investigation, the focus shifted from discovery and initial arrest to building a prosecutable case. Police worked with forensic specialists to present DNA, fingerprints, shoe tread analysis, and surveillance footage in a cohesive narrative. They also gathered detailed timelines, reconstructions, and digital footprints to show how Ryan's actions led directly to Maya's death. The meticulous preparation underscored the importance of integrating multiple lines of evidence to secure accountability in complex criminal cases. At this point, the investigation had transformed into a methodical prosecution strategy, carefully connecting every element from the apartment to Ryan's home, from the hallway cameras to the trash bags, and from forensic DNA to internet search history. The level of coordination among detectives, analysts, and forensic experts was extraordinary, reflecting both the severity of the crime and the need for unassailable proof. By late 2015, Ryan Cole remained in custody, fully aware of the mounting evidence against him. His legal team began negotiating strategies to discredit individual components, but the accumulation of data, from surveillance to forensics, made defense increasingly difficult. Investigators had pieced together a near-complete reconstruction of the night of Maya Eldridge's death. This phase of the case, spanning weeks after the arrest, demonstrated the evolution from initial suspicion to the assembly of a compelling prosecutorial argument. Every discovery, from footprints to digital traces, contributed to a portrait of premeditation, opportunism, and violent intent. For Maya's family, friends, and the Clearwater community, it offered the first glimpse of justice taking shape. The trial of Ryan Cole began on November 6, 2017, in the Orange County Courthouse, and the atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. The media coverage was intense, reflecting the public's fascination and horror at the events surrounding Maya Eldridge's death. Her family attended every day, sitting in the front row, a quiet presence of grief and determination. Ryan, in contrast, appeared composed and distant, maintaining the same rigid demeanor he had shown during questioning. His legal team, led by defense attorney Aaron Vickers, argued that the case relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence. From the outset, the prosecution painted a detailed narrative. They presented a chronological reconstruction of the events of September 12, 2015, starting with Maya leaving the nightclub, walking toward Harbor Point, and encountering Ryan Cole. Surveillance footage showed her entering the building with him following closely behind. Using floor plans and digital reconstructions, prosecutors demonstrated how Ryan had access to all key areas, including the stairwells, lobby, and hallways, giving him the opportunity to isolate Maya in her apartment. Then, the prosecution called forensic experts to testify. Dr. Allison Hayes, a forensic pathologist, explained the injuries sustained by Maya, detailing the bruises, defensive wounds, and abrasions consistent with sexual assault and strangulation. Her testimony emphasized the severity and premeditated nature of the attack. Dr. Hayes explained that the application of bleach and rearrangement of objects in the apartment suggested that the perpetrator understood how to manipulate crime scenes and remove evidence. She described how fibers from Ryan's clothing, hair samples, and DNA traces found on Maya's body provided a conclusive link to the suspect. Next, the prosecution introduced security footage from Harbor Point. Each clip was examined carefully in court. The videos captured Ryan carrying large trash bags that matched those later discovered in Maya's apartment, leaving and returning to the building at unusual times. The prosecution argued that this directly contradicted Ryan's claim that the bags contained routine trash and reinforced the theory that he had attempted to remove incriminating evidence. Digital evidence played a critical role. Prosecutors presented the logs from Ryan's phone and computer, highlighting the searches for bypassing keypad locks conducted shortly before and after Maya's murder. The timeline demonstrated that Ryan had knowledge of vulnerabilities in the apartment's security system and had likely planned to exploit them. Further, the messages on Maya's devices were shown, including her last outgoing text to a friend just minutes before the estimated time of the attack. This evidence created a chilling sense of immediacy, demonstrating the calculated nature of the crime. The defense attempted to challenge the DNA evidence, arguing that contamination could have occurred during the collection or analysis process. They questioned whether Ryan's fingerprints could have been accidentally transferred during routine building inspections. However, the prosecution countered with detailed chain of custody records and testimony from forensic analysts, establishing that all evidence was collected and analyzed according to strict protocols. Defense attorneys also emphasized Ryan's history as a respected security guard, portraying him as a responsible professional with no prior history of violent crime. They suggested the possibility that someone else could have followed Maya or that another resident may have had access. Witnesses for the defense attempted to cast doubt on the timeline, arguing that the movements recorded in security footage did not definitively place Ryan inside Maya's apartment at the time of the attack. Prosecution rebuttals were methodical. Detective Maria Torres, who led the investigation, testified about the inconsistencies in Ryan's statements and the physical evidence that contradicted his narrative. She explained how fingerprints, DNA, and shoe prints from the scene linked him directly to the apartment. She also detailed his internet searches, his unusual movements captured on video, and his prior suspicious behavior noted by building staff. Detective Torres emphasized that the evidence formed a cohesive story that aligned with witness accounts and the forensic timeline. The trial included emotional testimony from Maya's friends and family. Her best friend recounted the night they had spent together, painting a vivid picture of Maya's personality, her warmth, independence, and ambition. Maya's mother, Leela Eldridge, took the stand to describe the devastation caused by her daughter's loss. She recounted waking to the news and the unimaginable grief that followed. Each testimony added depth to Maya's life, humanizing her in the eyes of the jury and underscoring the profound impact of the crime. One of the most powerful pieces of evidence came from the two women who had accompanied Maya from the nightclub to the building. They testified in court about how they had ensured Maya's safety up to the lobby and confirmed that she had no other companions. Their statements corroborated the timeline, showing that Ryan had the opportunity to attack Maya in isolation. The jury was shown footage from street and building cameras, highlighting her movements and the points at which Ryan could have intercepted her. The prosecution also emphasized Ryan's behavior immediately after the murder. They presented evidence showing how he attempted to clean the apartment, manipulate the scene, and remove evidence in trash bags. Surveillance footage of him exiting the building with large bags in the early morning hours was shown in slow motion, and forensic experts explained how these actions were consistent with attempts to obscure a crime. The sequence of events painted a disturbing picture of premeditation and cold calculation. Throughout the trial, Ryan maintained his innocence. He did not testify, and his legal team repeatedly argued that the evidence was circumstantial. However, the accumulation of physical, digital, and testimonial evidence created a compelling narrative for the jury. Each expert witness and piece of footage was carefully connected, demonstrating not only that Ryan had access and opportunity, but that he had deliberately carried out the attack. After 7 days of testimony, the trial moved to closing arguments. The prosecution summarized the overwhelming evidence, emphasizing Ryan's access to Maya, his prior knowledge of security vulnerabilities, the DNA and fingerprint evidence, and his suspicious behavior before and after the crime. The defense urged the jury to focus on reasonable doubt, highlighting minor inconsistencies and the lack of direct video evidence showing the attack. They appealed to the jury's sense of caution, arguing that while the evidence was concerning, it did not conclusively prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The courthouse was packed with media and onlookers, all waiting for the verdict. When the jury returned, the foreperson announced that Ryan Cole was found guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, sexual battery, and burglary with assault. The courtroom reacted with a mix of relief and sorrow. Maya's parents, Ken and Leela, wept quietly, acknowledging that while nothing could bring back their daughter, justice had been served. Ryan maintained a blank expression, showing no visible reaction. Sentencing followed shortly after the verdict. The judge, highlighting the premeditation, betrayal of trust, and brutality of the crime, sentenced Ryan Cole to life in prison without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder. Additional sentences for sexual battery and burglary were set to run consecutively, totaling an additional 15 years. The judge remarked that the sentence reflected both the severity of the crime and the need to protect society from individuals capable of exploiting positions of trust. In the months following the conviction, Maya's family became increasingly involved in advocacy work. They collaborated with local law enforcement and victim support organizations to educate communities about personal safety, especially regarding building security and interactions with security personnel. Leela Eldridge gave public talks about recognizing warning signs, digital security, and the importance of reporting suspicious behavior. Ken focused on mentoring programs for young adults, encouraging vigilance and self-protection strategies. The Harbor Point Management and Vital Security, the company responsible for staffing the building, faced scrutiny in civil court. Maya's family filed a lawsuit citing negligence, arguing that prior complaints against Ryan had been ignored and that the building's security systems had known vulnerabilities. While the case was complex, it emphasized accountability beyond the individual perpetrator, highlighting systemic issues that allowed the crime to occur. The Eldridge family also established a scholarship fund in Maya's name for young women pursuing careers in digital media and communications, honoring her professional passion and providing a positive legacy from a tragic loss. Memorial events, including community vigils and safety awareness programs, became annual gatherings, both honoring Maya and educating the public on preventing similar tragedies. Over the years, Ryan Cole made several appeals, challenging the suppression of statements and attempting to overturn parts of his conviction. Each was denied, with courts affirming the robustness of the investigation, the chain of custody for evidence, and the overwhelming weight of forensic proof. His appeals highlighted the importance of strong investigative work and meticulous record-keeping in securing justice for victims of violent crime. For the community, the case remained a touchstone of the consequences of trust betrayed. Residents of Harbor Point were shocked that someone entrusted with their safety could commit such a crime. The incident prompted widespread revisions of security protocols, staff vetting processes, and monitoring procedures. In effect, Maya's death became a catalyst for stronger protections for vulnerable residents in high-rise apartments across Orlando. 2 years after the trial, in 2019, Maya's parents spoke at a victim rights conference. They described the emotional toll of losing a child, navigating the legal system, and fighting for justice. They emphasized the importance of resilience, advocacy, and community support. The narrative of Maya's life, her warmth, talent, and compassion, was central to their message, ensuring that her legacy lived beyond the tragedy. By 2021, the case had been cited in law enforcement training programs focusing on residential security, forensic evidence collection, and investigative strategy. Detectives and prosecutors reviewed the Eldridge case as an example of how multiple investigative threads, surveillance, forensics, digital evidence, and witness testimony can be woven together to form a cohesive and compelling case, even when direct visual evidence of the crime is lacking. Ultimately, the story of Maya Eldridge illustrates both the fragility of trust and the capacity for meticulous investigation to achieve justice. While her life was tragically cut short, the coordinated efforts of law enforcement, forensic experts, and the resilience of her family ensured that her killer was held accountable. Through their advocacy, the Eldridges have worked to transform grief into action, creating programs that educate, protect, and honor the memory of their daughter. Ryan Cole remains incarcerated, serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. He has refused public comment, and his presence in the prison system serves as a reminder of the consequences of violating trust and exploiting positions of authority. For Maya's family, the path forward is defined by remembrance, advocacy, and the ongoing fight to prevent future tragedies. Even years after the verdict, the story resonates in Orlando. Maya's vibrant personality, professional dedication, and impact on those around her are remembered in scholarships, community programs, and safety initiatives. Her life, though brief, continues to inspire vigilance, compassion, and justice. Through the Eldridge family's tireless work, Maya's story has become both a cautionary tale and a source of positive change, ensuring that her memory endures far beyond the confines of tragedy.